Welcome to Classic Briefs. Today we're diving into our explainer on crime and punishment, the murder that becomes a mental prison. Now let's just get one thing straight right off the bat, okay? This is not a mystery about who committed the murder. No, we actually know exactly who did it right from the very first pages. The real sweat-inducing mystery here is what happens when a man tries to prove he's entirely above morality. Can he survive his own mind? Or is he going to discover that he absolutely cannot escape his own conscience? Let's find out. Okay, let's dive into this. Meet a protagonist, Rodion Raskolnikov. The source material paints him as this destitute, totally isolated former university student living in 19th century Russia. I mean, his mind is incredibly sharp, but his circumstances, they're just unbelievably bleak. He's proud, he's arrogant, and he's completely cut himself off from the rest of the world. And it's in this dangerous, echoing isolation that his dark ideas push him to test a truly terrifying question. What if ordinary rules just don't apply to him? But, before he actually acts, we really have to look at his environment. St. Petersburg is not just a backdrop here. The text describes it as this active, oppressive force. Raskolnikov is basically being crushed by extreme poverty and crippling debt. He's living in this tiny room right under the roof that feels way more like a cupboard than an actual human dwelling. Add to that the suffocating summer heat, the dust, the inescapable stench of the city streets. It literally wraps around him like a fever. It's this physical delirium that just deepens his profound social isolation. The city itself acts like a giant pressure cooker, pushing his already overwrought nerves dangerously close to the edge. Moving on to Section 1, the motive and the extraordinary man theory. So Raskolnikov makes the choice to murder a local pawnbroker. Now, you might assume it's simply a desperate act to escape all that crushing poverty we just talked about, right? But the sources reveal a much darker, much colder philosophical arrogance at play. See, Raskolnikov had previously published this article outlining his chilling theory of the extraordinary man. He firmly believes humanity is split right down the middle. You've got the ordinary masses, who just have to obey the law, and then the extraordinary few, men like Napoleon, who possess the inner right to overstep ordinary morality. He literally believes great men must sometimes wade through blood to fulfill some grand idea. So he commits the murder as a test. He wants to answer a question. Is he an extraordinary man or just a trembling, ordinary creature? So he does it. He takes an axe and brutally murders the pawnbroker, Alyona, and tragically, her innocent sister, Lizaveta, who just happens to walk in at the absolute wrong time. But here's the thing. The physical act doesn't free him at all. It doesn't prove his greatness. Instantly, it triggers a total psychological collapse. As we track his descent, he plummets from his grand idea right to the murder and straight into a fever and debilitating paranoia, setting him on this inescapable path toward confession. The harsh reality of the bloody act just completely shatters his arrogant illusion. Which brings us to Section 2, a prison of the mind. You see, the legal punishment, the Siberia, the guards, the chains, that's all miles and miles away. The true punishment begins the very second that axe falls. He is instantly trapped in a mental prison, suddenly alienated from the rest of humanity, so much so that he can't even bring himself to embrace his own mother. Just listen to this desperate quote from the text. "I didn't kill a human being, but a principle. I killed the principle, but I didn't overstep." This is his mind frantically, desperately trying to maintain his cold, calculated rationalism. He's realizing he just wasn't capable of stepping over that moral line without it completely destroying him from the inside out. And the paranoia that sets in is absolutely intense. Just listen to this line. You miss an infinitesimal line, and you can build it into a pyramid of evidence. A fly flew by and saw it. He becomes totally obsessed with the idea that he left a clue. Funnily enough, Dostoevsky actually wrote these incredibly anxious chapters while frantically dodging his own real-life creditors to pay off gambling debts. And honestly, you can absolutely feel that suffocating panic right there on the page. Raskolnikov acts so erratically, he actually returns to the bloody crime scene just to ring the doorbell again. He's practically longing to feel that terrifying thrill, nearly giving himself away to the police. His own mind is now acting as the prosecutor, judge, and jury all rolled into one. This sets the stage for Section 3, the detective and the saint. Now, what's really interesting here is how these two specific characters represent the ultimate external forces applying the squeeze to Raskolnikov's fractured mind. Let's compare them. On one side, you have Porfiry Petrovich. He represents the inescapable logic of the law. But he's no ordinary detective. Oh no, he utilizes deep psychological investigation, playing this masterful cat-and-mouse game because he truly understands the criminal mind. Then, on the other side is Sonya. She represents the inescapable weight of the soul. Forced into prostitution just to feed her starving family, she embodies profound compassion, suffering, humility, and faith. She somehow maintains her moral endurance while his crumbles entirely. And the real genius of the source text is how it surrounds our protagonist with these secondary characters who reflect all the different moral paths and rationalizations humans take when facing poverty and pride. You've got his loyal friend Razmihen, who stays grounded, his sister Dunya, who is ready for principled sacrifice to save his family. Then on the much darker side, the terrifying Sverdrigalov, who just embraces utter depravity and nihilism. Marmeladov, Sonya's father, succumbs completely to hopelessness and addiction, and Luzhin represents purely narcissistic self-interest. Every single one of these characters shows a totally different way human beings respond to sheer desperation. But Raskolnikov's path ultimately forces him to face Sonya, who really is the true heart of the story. When he finally breaks down and confesses his crime to her, he totally expects her to recoil in absolute disgust. But instead, she's horrified by how much he is suffering. She actually reads the biblical story of Lazarus to him and delivers this vital instruction: suffer and expiate your sin by it. That's what you must do. She convinces him that his grand, arrogant theories, they only lead to death. The only actual path back to life and spiritual rebirth is to publicly confess, accept his guilt, and embrace the suffering. And that leads us to Section 4. Confession and rebirth. All of that agonizing psychological pressure, from Porfiry's mind games to Sonya's pure spiritual love, it finally acts like a vice, breaking his destructive pride. He goes to the dirty Haymarket, falls right to his knees, and kisses the earth he defiled. He walks into the police station and finally utters the words, "It was I killed the old pawnbroker woman and her sister Lizabeta with an axe and robbed them." He accepts his sentence to hard labor. But Siberia isn't the end of his life. It's actually the place where his slow, painful spiritual rebirth finally begins. By shedding that false sense of superiority, he finally rejoins the human race. Let's wrap up with Section 5, Why Readers Struggle, and Why It Still Matters. Now, modern readers do sometimes struggle with the sheer claustrophobia of this text, the long philosophical tangents and the intense fever dreams. But that overwhelming atmosphere is exactly what makes it a masterpiece. It's designed to make you physically feel the moral panic. So the crucial point is, why do we still connect to this 19th century mental prison today? Well, because it exposes a universal human flaw. We all try to rationalize our wrongs. We all build these little intellectual excuses for stepping over the line, convincing ourselves that our unique circumstances make us the exception. But eventually, just like Raskolnikov, we are forced to face that quiet, inescapable voice in our heads. The conscience simply cannot be outsmarted by logic. And that's why Crime and Punishment still matters today. It proves that the most terrifying prison is not always the one built by the law, but the one built by our own conscience. Can any amount of intellect truly shield us from the immense weight of our own actions? I'll leave you to think about that. Thanks for joining me for this Classic Briefs Explainer, and keep questioning the ideas that shape your world.